While the world has been blown away by the attacking potential of Manchester City, Liverpool and Spurs this season, a less positive trend has emerged elsewhere in the Premier League. Astonishingly, no fewer than 8 of the 20 clubs, 40%, are scoring at less than a goal a game this season, and that would have been 9 had Newcastle not hit 3 against hapless Southampton at the weekend. The problem goes up as far as 7th-placed Burnley, who have registered 27 goals in 30 games. The statistics could have worrying consequences for the image of Premier League entertainment if it develops into a longer-term trend. Last season, only the 3 relegated teams Hull, Middlesbrough and Sunderland scored fewer than 38 goals from their 38 games. The previous season just 2 clubs, West Brom and Aston Villa, reached that target. We investigate the reasons why this year a significant section of the best league in the world has become a goal-shy zone. For the record, the 8 teams averaging less than a goal a game are Brighton, Burnley, Crystal Palace, Huddersfield, Southampton, Stoke, Swansea, and West Brom. Newcastle have scored 30 in 30 games. Gap between top and bottom. The presence of world-class managers at the top end of the Premier League, men like Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte and Jurgen Klopp, have made the big clubs better. Results in the Champions League this season underline that. The consequence for everyone else is that facing those teams is about damage limitation rather than trying to give it a go and trying to win games. When Newcastle were beaten 2-0 at Liverpool 2 weeks ago, there was a sense they were happy to escape with that to avoid further damage to their goal difference. Ditto Stoke City in Monday night's loss by the same score against Manchester City. Of the last 126 league games played between the Big Six and the rest, it's only happened twice that the lower-ranked side has scored 3 or more goals: Swansea's 3-1 victory against Arsenal in January, and Watford's 4-1 win over Chelsea at the start of February. More typical was the last round of games when Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Watford and Stoke scored just 2 goals in total against Spurs, Chelsea, Arsenal, and Manchester City. Bournemouth apart, there was little intent from kickoff to try and hurt the opposition. The amount of relegation 6-pointers given the Big Six aren't giving much away this season. The pressure has intensified among the rest of the 14 clubs when they face each other. Every point is precious in those games, and the priority has often been not to concede given the financial consequences of relegation. Saturday's tense battle between Huddersfield and Swansea ended 0-0 after the visitors launched a desperate rearguard action with 10 men following Jordan Ayew's dismissal. The previous weekend, it was Southampton and Stoke locked in a goalless draw. Promoted sides Brighton and Huddersfield have both deservedly received credit for their results this season, but part of their success has been keeping matches tight, with 4 0-0 draws each. Brighton's goalless draws have come against Burnley, Crystal Palace, Newcastle and Watford, games in which they needed to pick up points and couldn't afford to lose. Huddersfield have drawn 0-0 home and away against Burnley, while Swansea have also collected 4 goalless draws this season. Lack of top-class strikers. Formation changes have seen many clubs play with just one recognized striker. Aspiring players these days have a better chance of making it as a number 10 or holding midfielder, and with top clubs taking the best centre forwards, the rest are left with strikers holding very average goal-scoring records. Famously, Stoke City's £15 million purchase Saido Berahino hasn't scored a goal for 2 years. Southampton paid a club record £19 million for Monaco's Guido Carrillo in January, and he hasn't scored yet in 8 matches. Ditto, Crystal Palace are waiting for a goal from Alexander Sirloth, £9 million, a natural number 9 who has been pushed wide to accommodate Christian Benteke. Newcastle manager Rafa Benitez was so desperate for a striker in January, he signed the injured Islam Slimani on loan from Leicester. The Algerian still hasn't been fit enough to play. 18 of the 21 leading scorers in the Premier League play for the Big Six. 11 clubs still haven't got a player who has scored more than 7 goals, the amount claimed by Liverpool midfielder Philippe Coutinho before he left in the new year. West Brom's leading scorer is £15 million Salomon Rondon with 5, the same number reached by Newcastle's top marksman Dwight Gale. Poor Albion are the lowest scorers in the league with 23 goals, fewer than Harry Kane or Mo Salah. The age of defensive managers. While Guardiola, Klopp and Arsene Wenger are naturally attacking coaches at the top end of the table, it shouldn't hide the fact that clubs lower down have turned to managers with reputations for prioritizing defense. Not surprising given there have been 9 managerial changes in the Premier League this season, with the incoming bosses given a specific instruction of keeping their clubs in the division. Roy Hodgson, Crystal Palace; David Moyes, West Ham; Sam Allardyce, Everton; and Paul Lambert, Stoke City, have never won awards for artistic impression and letting their players off the leash. Chris Hughton, Brighton, and Rafa Benitez, Newcastle, also pride themselves for making their teams organized and hard to beat. Even Sean Dyche, Burnley, a candidate for Manager of the Year, doesn't care if his team pick up points rather than become involved in high-scoring thrillers. Burnley's 30 league matches this season have yielded a very modest total of 53 goals, 27 for and 26 against. Not that Claret's diehards will care a jot. What's next? Football is cyclical and Premier League bosses selling their wares around the world will hope this season's famine is a blip. However, there have to be concerns it will continue into next season as well. While Manchester City and Manchester United lead the charge for the best and most expensive players, and Spurs and Liverpool aren't going anywhere, the gulf between top and bottom looks set to grow, having a detrimental effect on competition and therefore goals spread through the league. The best-case scenario is that those more adventurous managers in mid-table or at the bottom, like Bournemouth's Eddie Howe, are successful and emulated. Also, clubs like Leicester need to fight for as long as they can to keep their attacking gems. Jamie Vardy and Riyad Mahrez, so the goal scorers aren't all stockpiled at the big clubs. Looking at Arsenal and Chelsea, it may also be that two of the big six slip back to the pack in the next few years. It's up to clubs like Everton and Leicester to take advantage, and doing it by getting on the front foot. It's not usually a good idea to tinker with long-established rules. Introducing bonus points for goal scoring would add an extra layer of complication, but the Premier League will be anxious. To have nearly half the league scoring less than a goal per game is not a good global look.